Well, would you pay money to watch AEW Dynamite?
Not in the last few months, I wouldn't have, no.
Oh, boy. I would have paid money if somebody could have warned me ahead of time. You son of a gun, you didn't do it. I would have paid money not to see this because we'll try to go through this show as quickly as possible. Everybody's been waiting for my thoughts on the first segment of this show. And I don't even want to talk to anybody about the first segment of the show except one person, the person that was most harmed, most offended, most damaged by the segment that opened Dynamite this past Wednesday night, July 13th. They actually booked Wardlow against the company mascot, our little dog Pockets. And I'm not going to talk about the match because it wasn't a match. It was a masturbatory, self-indulgent fantasy by the Puddin' Gang and Tony Khan's favorite little fucking Halloween costume. And they're playing with Tony's father's money. I understand nobody's really going to be harmed by this except Tony's father, and he's got plenty. Except for one other person, Wardlow. Wardlow is the one that's going to suffer for this. Because as long as the Richie Rich of pro wrestling has all the money that he wants to spend on his vanity project, and Little Pockets is his favorite wrestler that he likes to dress up like on Halloween, and he will interject him in this program no matter what. Like I said, Pockets is getting the same amount of money, and he gets to be on TV, and the Puddin' Gang, they're clearly not qualified to be in the spot they're in, but they get to be on TV. And Tony gets to do his thing, and Tony's father ain't going to miss the money. But Wardlow is going to miss the money. And Wardlow is the one that's being hurt. And Wardlow is the one that apparently has nobody looking out for him now. And Wardlow is also the one that's new enough in the business that he doesn't know what they're fucking doing to him. So they've gone this far, this long-running thing where finally Wardlow could break away from MJF. And the bound, as New Jack would say, in the chains of slavery to MJF. And now he breaks loose and he's a monster. And the people are loving him. And what do? They start putting him in with job guys, thinking that if he beats job guys up, that gets him over. Which is ridiculous. You beat up job guys, incidentally, on your way to wrestling main event stars is how you get over. You don't get over by wrestling job guys as your meat and potatoes. So first he was fighting 20 unnamed security guards with a phony lawyer behind them. Now, if you even tolerate or even like Pockets and this whole comedy wrestling gang thing, what sense did this match make? Two baby faces? Who to cheer for? You're splitting your audience. You make your monster look like a fool just because he was out there trying to, and stooging for Pockets, trying to make it plausible that this big, good-looking guy is taking bumps for an emaciated Jiffy Lube employee. And there's Pockets kicking out of Wardlow's shit that last week he was beating up 20 grown men, and this week he can't handle a goddamn homeless bum. The bum's getting 2 counts on him because they're afraid to hurt anybody's feelings over there and say, okay, Pockets, we've indulged your fucking twiddling yourself on television with your hands in your pockets for 3 years now, but now we got to get a guy over to make money, so it's going to be one tackle pancake, power bomb, 1, 2, 3, thank you for coming. But they can't do that. So I'm speaking directly to Wardlow right now. Here is the best advice in your current position. Here's the only career advice I can give you. I've been involved with finding, discovering, helping develop or train talent for 30 years. More. Here's the best career advice I can give you. I want you to get a pen and a paper and write down what I'm saying. Vince McMahon, area code 203. John Laurinaitis, area code 203. Scratch that, not him. Bruce Pritchard, area code 281. He's from Houston. That's his cell phone. And actually, don't even worry about him, because if you can't get Vince, no use trying to get to Bruce. Go to Jeff Jarrett. He's going to be running that whole fucking thing in 3 years. 615.
Well, I have a feeling there's going to be some bleeping here this week on the show.
That's the only career advice I can give Wardlow at this point. I was embarrassed for him and ashamed for the company that they would present this with one of the only two guys, MJF being the other one, who apparently they've fucked this up royally now. MJF and Wardlow, the only two guys that had never been on any major television before that AEW got over on their own. Actually, they got over on their own on the AEW program, despite the best efforts of AEW to keep them from getting over. And this is what you do with Wardlow. You're so creatively bankrupt, so mentally spent, so, methamphetamine fucking addled, that you would do this with a real legitimate star in the making and put him down to the level of these other fucking sewer dwellers, the Puddin' Gang and Pockets. Those are real phone numbers, by the way, Brian. If you have to bleep them, go ahead and bleep them. But that's what Wardlow, everybody in the locker room has at least one or two of those, some more. If I were you, I'd be getting a hold of them quickly as possible, because your future in AEW is looking very, very dim. Your thoughts, Brian?
Well, perhaps a call to Barry Bloom might be in order as well.
I don't think Barry Bloom would answer it if he saw the first segment of Dynamite this past Wednesday.
There's a couple of different issues, and you touched on one of them. I'll get there in a second, the idea of Orange Cassidy being used in this match against Wardlow in this way. But like you said, what if it was any other wrestler who's a babyface? Just slide any other babyface in there. What sense does the match make? Wardlow can't beat this other babyface. He could beat 20 security guards in a minute. He can't beat Orange Cassidy, but he can't beat this babyface. Who are the fans supposed to cheer for? How does Wardlow look better? I put two things on Twitter. One of them drove a lot of people crazy. I loved it. One of them was the booking of Wardlow since the MJF feud has been atrocious. And Les Thatcher responded, and he said, that's an understatement. And you know what? He's right. We said, I hope they don't mess up Wardlow. We said it time and time again before that match. I mean, unless they put a blonde wig on him, there's very few things they could have done worse than the way they booked him since the MJF match. It's almost 2 months now. He had a feud with Mark Sterling and security guards, and then eventually he got the Scorpio Sky, and then now we see him defend the title in the opening match against Orange Cassidy, who
he beat Scorpio Sky in a third of the time and 10 times easier than he was able to beat Pockets. And Scorpio Sky's another full-grown adult human being, at least.
I agree with you. It's ridiculous. And he's so much bigger than Orange Cassidy that it made it even worse, especially because he's a guy that you would think they're pushing. Now I wonder. As soon as they put the TNT belt on someone now, it feels like the opposite of a push. It feels like, oh boy, they're stuck with that belt now. Because it's been ruined the last, I guess, since the beginning of the year. With Orange Cassidy, I drove people nuts because I put the truth. It's the fucking truth.
Well, it's observably true. How can that even be controversial?
What I put was AEW Dynamite was a lot better when Orange Cassidy was injured and off TV. And it was. He's been shoved on that show, and I get it. There are AEW fans that love him. There are fans who love Jimmy Fallon. They think he's so funny and so talented, and people like me see that shit and go, that shit is so lame and so soft and fucking garbage. Orange Cassidy, I've seen the whole act. And that's what it is, it's an act. I've seen the whole routine, the whole little slacker routine. Now he's got his new music. It's the same act. We've seen the same thing over and over again. It's not exciting to watch a guy who can do some moves and kick out of everything. Did anyone ever wrestle in someone's basement? I had a friend who had like a wrestling league in their basement, and we would go there and have matches. You kick out of fucking everything. Everyone's kicking out. No one's finisher means anything.
Yes, because we're not finished playing yet.
Exactly. This match was counterproductive to Wardlow to the nth degree. It was not counterproductive to Orange Cassidy. There's nothing that's counterproductive to Orange Cassidy. He just does his thing and ruins every segment he's a part of for a large majority of wrestling fans. But Tony likes him. He moves merch. He was in a segment with Wardlow to start the show, so I think that was probably the highest ratings of the show. So he'll be able to get some credit for that, as opposed to...
that counts for the Big Bang Theory, doesn't it?
It would either count for the Big Bang Theory, or you would look at how many people dropped off after this segment. But no, man, Orange Cassidy, we've seen it all. This is so tired and so lame. And the booking of Wardlow should disqualify Tony Khan from any Booker of the Year conversation at all. Just that. And the pops are less today than they were a month and a half ago.
You mentioned nothing could be counterproductive to pockets. We've got a creative audience out there. Can we come up with some scenario that would be counterproductive to pockets and try to pitch that as a booking suggestion?
I can come up with one. He puts on a pair of trunks and wrestles like a wrestler and acts like a normal human being. He couldn't do that. Then he would just be another guy.
He wears his sunglasses at night, and we can hope that he gets run over by the oncoming car.
Like, you hear some arguments from people like, oh, he's proved he can go.
What?
What does that mean?
Who says that?
Yeah, I mean, he could do moves. There are fans who just want to see people run through the moves that people did in Japan years ago, whatever it is. They want to see people do lots of moves and kick out of lots of things. But there are some of us that are bored by that. And that Orange Cassidy is just a mascot for that caliber of wrestling. He is terrible.
You can train a chimpanzee to do the moves. Is he then understanding the psychology behind them? Well, but Pockets doesn't either, because actually a chimpanzee might be more trainable than Pockets, because a chimpanzee wouldn't come in with a bad attitude thinking, well, I know everything. And
one other thing I'll say, they've been there a long time. The best friends should not be on TV anymore. As soon as I see them, I groan. And I always did, but especially now, it's like, God damn, why are they still there? It's been years. Send the Bushwhackers home.
Well, then they went to break, and Jericho and Kingston came back, and they're still mad at each other, and they're going to have some kind of blood match, and Jericho's going to kill Eddie Kingston, and Kingston's going to make Jericho pay with every ounce of his blood for giving Ortiz a crew cut, and because Ruby Soho stuck her arm in a car door. That's what I got out of that segment. Then I saw a commercial, and I got some of the Alien tape. Have you heard about this, Brian?
The Alien tape? Yeah, from the commercial? I got some of that too, yeah.
Alien tape. It sticks permanently to any surface. It supports up to 100 pounds. I couldn't fucking unroll it. Anyway, then came Moxley, the plumber Moxley. Boy, I wish Plumber Moxley could have teamed up with Plowboy Frazier. Plumber Moxley wrestled Take a Shit. And my honeymoon is over with old Take a Shit. Because now, thanks to folks digging things up on Twitter, as soon as I praised this guy, I said he looks like the only guy that I've seen, or the only person, male or female, that I've seen from that DDT Japanese mud show bullshit that actually looks like a wrestler, and he has some size and he has some ability. I've now seen him doing the Harpo. That's what we're going to call it from now on when a grown, adult, alleged professional wrestler has a competitive match with a 6-year-old girl. Doing the Harpo.
That bothers me so much, because I love the Marx Brothers. I have everything. I have every movie. I have every book. I love the Marx Brothers. And Harpo Marx is one of the most talented people in the history of cinema. When you compare these people to him...
I know, and a lot of people have said that on Twitter. They've said, how dare you besmirch and diminish the name of Harpo Marx, but he looks just dead like him. Have you seen the people on Twitter who actually never have seen Harpo Marx and then Google him to find out what we're talking about and then blow snot because he does look exactly like Twinkle Toes?
I've seen people react like that, yeah.
But anyway, so I've seen Take a Shit doing the Harpo with a 6-year-old girl in Japan on video. So fuck this guy. He's another goddamn mental incompetent who wrestles kids and sex dolls, so I don't care how good he is, he's disqualified. Fuck him. And against Moxley, yes, they did the spot where they stand in the ring and chop each other back and forth. They fought on the floor. And Take a Shit got juice in a cold match on free TV for no apparent reason. So we saw everything the plumber can do. And then here came Christian Cage and Dino Douche. And I've got to be honest with you, Brian, until we start seeing Dino have full-fledged long wrestling matches again, Christian Cage has done the impossible and got Dino Douche over with me. Because if this had been what we were looking at all along, I could have seen some light at the end of the tunnel. I could have seen some blue sky with this guy. We started out watching this giant fucking goof in this dinosaur mask having 15, 20-minute indie-style matches doing backflips and cartwheels and those phony fucking looking kicks that he has to do. And his matches didn't make any sense. And he's a baby face, which makes no sense. And he does a promo every once in a while, or he used to a few years ago, talking about being 35 million years old in a voice a little bit more stentorian than Keith Lee's, but kind of as grandiose because he wants people to think he's a college graduate. And that version of Dino Douche has sucked pond water. But now he's all in black. And he looks like a fucking beast. And I think they've even made him tan a little bit more. And he's still jacked up. And now he's got an obnoxious heel mouthpiece that's also a name star that everybody recognizes, that's doing brilliant work. And Dino becomes the fucking giant, jacked up henchman behind the blabbermouth to do his evil bidding and destroy people in short amounts of time convincingly. With no backflips and no fucking stupid promos and no goddamn 20-minute high spot matches where he's trying to wrestle like he weighs 117 pounds. If this is what we had seen first, I would have said you can make some money with this guy. Apparently, everybody else had already seen what Dino's normal matches and outlook on wrestling was like, is why they just said, fuck it, we're just going to let him do that. But this works for me. And Christian is doing a great job, verbally and with his heel attitude. And he came out and blistered the poor old Varsity Blondes. Remember when there was a chance they could have done something with Pillman and that window closed? There was never a chance that they could do anything with Griff. So Cage cuts the promo and then tells Dino that Griff looks like Jungle Boy, which is like waving the red flag in front of the bull. And Dino goes in and acts like a menacing monster and demolishes Griff with a choke slam, and then another choke slam that Christian Cage calls for, and then the tar pit, which is his version of the snare trap, and a tap out. Now I continue to wonder if Jungle Boy is injured and they just don't want to say, because elsewise he ought to be on TV or visible somewhere, like he's not just hiding in a hole. But at least, and before we talk about the afterbirth here and what they did wrong, this is working for Dino. That's what he should have been all along. What do you think?
I agree it's working with him. I don't know if I think it's what he should be all along, because I think it means a little more because we have seen him, again, too goofy for my taste, but we've seen him as a good guy before.
Yeah, but everything I've seen of him up till now made me want to see less of him. This actually makes me want to see more of him. So I'm thinking if we saw this first instead of that, it might even be better.
Let me ask you this, though, because since he's been managing, I guess we should say, Luchasaurus, Christian hasn't wrestled. I mean, I don't know what's going on in those other programs they have, but I don't think he's wrestled. What are they doing with him? Because he's the one who attacked Jungle Boy, and now he's the one who has Luchasaurus. When Jungle Boy comes back, Is it Jungle Boy Luchasaurus or Jungle Boy Christian? Or does Jungle Boy have to go through Luchasaurus to get the Christian?
Bingo. And see, that's the thing. They're smart enough to realize with Christian, and probably also because he said, hey, I am 40-something years old and, what the fuck? They kept putting Punk in there for matches just to get ratings, just to get people to watch because it's Punk wrestling. He didn't need to because he didn't need to get wins to get over. Christian Cage does not need to get wins to get over. He's been over 20 years. He needs to get some heat, and that's how he can do it, by talking and by having this behemoth to do his bidding for him. And when Jungle Boy comes back, that's the deal. He's, Jungle Boy can prove himself by slaying the dragon, kind of pun there intended. But then money would be with Cage and Jungle Boy, because Cage can talk and Dino can't. So Dino is a useful tool there to get to Cage and Jungle Boy, where they can have a really good match and Cage can teach him something, along with putting him over eventually. But there's no reason for Christian to be out there just wrestling TV matches to get over. That's what they're supposed to do with guys that ain't over yet, that are new. But, Tony's backwards philosophy on that. They'll come into company, you'll barely see them for a year, then they'll start wrestling on TV every week after they've already lost. Anyway, the point is they can't leave well enough alone, because everything has to be chaos and everything has to be done to death. So after Dino demolishes Griff and beats him with chokeslam in the tar pit, then he shit cans Griff to the floor and jumps on Pillman, and that would have been fine too, except they've got to go out to the floor, and he puts Pillman on a table and then grabs Griff Garrison and chokeslams Griff Garrison on top of Brian Pillman, and the table didn't break. And besides the fact, we've talked about it before, don't have your fucking heels doing cool shit that everybody applauds and go, wow. They did this last week or week before with somebody else where the fucking heel was doing cool shit. And everybody breaks tables. It's way past done at this point. It would have just been more effective with what you're trying to do with Dino, is if he beat Griff Garrison and fucking Brian Pillman Jr. came to check on his partner and he grabs Pillman by the scruff of the neck and choke slams him in the middle of the ring too and stands over both of them. But now you've gone out and you've set him on the table and you got this shop class project going on, and now the physics didn't work because, and I don't know why anybody didn't tell him this to begin with. It's not like they've just invented tables. When you've got Brian Pillman laying on the table, his body laying flat lengthwise on the table reinforces the table, because it dissipates the weight of the blow of Griff Garrison's body weight coming down from all in the middle to spreading it out across the length of the table. Plus, Dino worked the first choke slam, at least on Griff's part. Poor Brian Pillman had to lay there for two of them. But he put Griff's shoulder blades on Pillman's belly / dick, and Griff's legs and ass was off the edge, and just he bounced off and off the table onto the floor. If Brian Pillman's chest had been in the middle of the table and Griff landed back first with his legs up in the air, the table would have broken, but Brian would have landed on his head. And a splash by Griff Garrison, not coming back first but stomach first, would have broken the table, because the weight would have come down evenly and in the middle across Pillman. So maybe Dino should have gone for a vertical suplex and then dropped him flat into a gourd buster. Or just don't break a fucking table in every match. Because then not only did you have a fuck up on live TV where, everybody knew instantly, it was supposed to break. Now you've taken them back into thinking about phony shit. If they had broken the table, the people would have cheered because they cheer table breaking. So then you're making the people cheer your fucking heels, so you're an idiot. But what they did then was Dino grabs Griff and does the exact same thing again, and Brian Pillman lays there and gets squished again, stiffer this time, because the second one was extra high and extra hard and all of Griff's weight on Brian Pillman. So it was needlessly stiff on him to get the table to break. And did anybody bother to tell you, Dino dipshit, when you're on live TV, it's bad enough for the people in the building, but when you're on live TV and they can't even edit it, never do the exact same thing again after a fuck up, because then you're just reinforcing to the people that are watching that you fucked up the first time. So they got all the way through this segment great, and then just because they had to break furniture, shit the bed again. You see what I'm saying about this shit? The psychology is completely off of everything, because there is none.
And I agree with you about the tables thing, and I think you're exaggerating a little bit. It's not every match, but it's at least once per show, sometimes several times per show, and it's in the same area, it's the same table, and you know it's coming. I mean, forget about the fact that he messed up the first one and everyone knew the second one was coming. Everyone knew the first one was coming. It's just so obvious and it's so overdone. Tables at ringside, guys going through them in AEW, is as overdone as standing in the middle of the ring and exchanging blows, either at the beginning or in the middle of a match.
And then, did you see Adam Page? It looked like they had just called him at home where he was in the middle of shampooing his carpets. And he just bopped on down to television. He had a house cleaning scarf on his head, a hair bun, and a tie-dyed t-shirt. He looked like the love child of superstar Billy Graham and Aunt Jemima. And he's back in the back again doing backstage skits with the Dork Order. They've just decided to forget that he was the world champion at all because it was such a underwhelming title reign. And now he's back dressing like a douchebag and talking and playing with underneath folks. And they're mad apparently at the House of Black. So the House of Black and the Dork Order are a program that we're going to be treated to. How can a supposed cowboy look like such a fucking twat?
Because he's as much a cowboy as I am.
But you can dress up like a fucking gangster or a cowboy.
I'm not a gangster.
I didn't mean to strike a nerve there, pal. I'm just saying you can dress up like anything. If you're calling yourself something, then you should dress like that thing.
But that's not the attitude of the Young Bucks and their friends. It's we're here to play. We're here to do our little skits. We're here to have fun with each other. We think we have people who like it, so we're just going to do whatever we want. And if you haven't noticed, guys like Adam Page and the Bucks, they don't play well with others. So if they're going to stay within their little camp and them and the Dark Order will feud with the House of Black, the House of Black are already death on TV. If you're going to put an Adam Page and the Dark Order in another death segment, it doesn't make much of a difference. They spent a couple of years getting ready for Adam Page to be the world champion. When all those guys came in, you would hear them internally, they would say, oh, Adam Page is the one, Adam Page is the one. And they spent all that time and everyone would say, oh, the thing with him and Kenny is so brilliant. And no one gives a shit about him today. No one gives a shit. And it's not just because of the booking. This is not a case where you could blame Tony's booking as much as Adam Page. They gave him the belt and somehow he got
less
boring.
over.
Yeah. Somehow he got worse.
I disagree with you about one that you can blame the booking for the complete disinterest in I mean, both can be true. Page has done nothing except the same shit he does in every match. There's never any surprises, but the booking was abysmal as well.
Yes.
Yes. And then Jim Ross entered for hour 2. They've already figured out a way to make this awkward. It was kind of okay, here comes Jim Ross, and he's fresh for hour 2, and he's more cheerful, and it was a little upbeat thing last week. This week, the way they formatted it, they said, ladies and gentlemen, Jim Ross, and the music plays, and he comes out, and he's headed to the announce desk, and before JR even sat down and said anything, they segued his music to Hager's music. And here comes Hager down, and then JR sits down at the desk, and you hear him speak. It was an awkward transition. It's like, hey, here's JR, and he comes out, and then something else is happening, and we never heard from JR until after that Hager entrance. Have him sit, if you're going to bring him out in the middle of the show, have him sit down at the desk and say 15 seconds of pleasantries, and then segue. It's a less jarring transition. Jake Hager. I hate Jake Hager. Jake Hager versus Claudio Castagnoli. And I wrote, can Claudio make Hager acceptable? And the jury may still be out. Claudio seems like he's having fun. He's got his oomph back. He, was mistreated and beleaguered in the other place. JR actually opened up cheerful when we did hear him talk, and then his mic dropped out mid-sentence, and we missed his plug for his Iowa appearance. But again, with Claudio, I mean, he's got everything. And the only reason now that people are going, but it's still Claudio is because we've seen him for 10 years on the other program being used in the middle. But if anybody deserves a chance to be used commensurate with his ability, it's Claudio. He's got the size, he's got the experience, he's a hell of a worker, he's strong as a bull, and he's got some personality if you let him show it. So Hager, on the other hand, his timing is off, his body language is awkward, and I don't really get the whole goddamn thing besides he's big and he was a shooter, so he's legitimate. But there was one point. Did you see where Claudio was up on a top turnbuckle and Hager pulled him off and had him over his shoulder and just turned around and belly-to-bellied him? And it scared me because Claudio put his left arm out to catch himself, which is dangerous. And that's also a sign that either he didn't know which direction he was going till he was already going, or he didn't feel like the guy that had him well enough to put him down in the right place. And after watching it back in slow motion, I think all of the above was true. But, Claudio made a big comeback. He's got a great drop kick, great cross body off the top at 6'5" and 260 pounds. He did the giant swing into the Scorpion, had the Scorpion on Hager, and Hager waves the job guys down. Like, it just... I can understand the heel manager doing this. And I've done it where, oh shit, the guy's in trouble or the team's in trouble and the heel manager waves down reinforcements. But I've never seen a 6'something, 250-pound MMA fighter be put in a submission hold. And instead of selling the hold, he's leaning over, waving, job guys, come and help me. Come and help me. In the middle of a fucking submission hold. But, so here comes the Cool Hand Luke and Daddy Mac Daddy and Danny Garcia, the Rock Sex. And it basically, Claudio dropped the hold and just goes and looks at the guys and turns back to Hager, and Hager hits him with a rock bottom and gets a 2 count. And then they start going back and forth, and old Cool Hand Luke jumps up on the apron, and Claudio nails him, and then hits a pop-up uppercut on Hager and hits the sit-out powerbomb 1, 2, 3. So as the right winner, it was a completely blah finish that wasn't even using the pieces of the chess game that were on the chessboard. And it was awkward, and it made Claudio look stupid when he turns his back on his opponent in the ring just to stare at people that are not doing anything. And again, this is possibly inexperienced booker or producers or whoever handles this shit thinking, well, we don't want the heels to interfere in front of the referee and bury the referee. Well, they should have had Knox out there for that. You can't bury the corpse. He's a zombie. But you don't have to. You still create some fucking excitement at the end if, boom, when when Claudio got the Scorpion on Hager in the middle of the ring without him having to wave people down, aren't his friends watching? Here comes Luke and Daddy and Danny. And maybe as Claudio has got the fucking Scorpion and he's cranking up, he sees the first guy, Luke, jump up on the apron and he lets go of the fucking Scorpion to fucking nail Luke off the apron. And he turns around and Hager's still on the ground, and Hager, as he goes to pick Hager up, Hager small packages him. 1, 2, but Claudio kicks out and comes back up, which makes Daddy Mac come up on the apron. And there fucking Hager is coming charging at Claudio, but Claudio ducks and Hager can wipe Daddy Mac out with a big shot or a boot. Mac hits the floor. And then Claudio goes for a body slam, but Hager drops behind, goes for the O'Connor roll-up. Rolls up Claudio, gets 1, 2. Claudio kicks out. Hager goes head-to-head with Danny Garcia, who's up on the apron screaming at the referee. Hager turns into Claudio's kick to the gut and the fucking powerbomb. Boom. Now we've got some up and down, and people are taking bumps, and there's some excitement instead of just bleh. What do you think, Brian?
I don't think there's anything that could have saved this. I didn't see a lot of this. Because what I put on Twitter was, you don't book Jake Hager in a singles match if you want me to stay in the room.
Well, that's true.
I don't think there's a single fan that wants to see a Jake Hager singles match. If he's standing in the back, making his one face during a promo, you can kind of put up with it. He's a tall, big guy. In a tag team or multi-man match, okay, you need a big guy. But in a singles match, nobody wants to see Jake Hager. And I know a lot of people like Claudio, and I agree he's talented. Hasn't done much for me so far in AEW. They put him with the Blackpool group, which doesn't do much for me in AEW, so I'm not really crazy about it. I hate that everyone has to be in a faction. I hate that. We'll see where they go, but I think he has a ceiling too, especially right now.
Well, speaking of the ceiling, they dropped this one out of a helicopter and it crashed through the ceiling. There was an interview with Tony with Thunder Rosa and Tony Storm and Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter and Reba. And the whole point of this thing backstage was for Reba to bring in a sandbag to Britt Baker, who hands it to Tony and says, you carry her around for a month. And Thunder Rosa is screaming, I'll kill you for that, or whatever. And they confused everybody that's not on Twitter. And is there any non-kayfabe meaning, as somebody put on Twitter, for sandbag, and for somebody to bring a sandbag in and make a big deal of the sandbag in the interview, when it wasn't even, as we've discovered, Thunder Rosa sandbagging anybody? It was the fact that Marina Shafir is a drizzling fucking shits. But now they're doing sandbag interviews because they're cute, and the audience will think it's funny. The 5% of the people that might be watching this program that would understand that. And then Serena Deeb wrestled Anna Jay. And then Tony Schiavone was in the back with Jane Cargill, Stokely Bivens, Malcolm Carmichael. What's his fucking name now?
Stokely Hathaway.
Stokely Hathaway. He can talk his ass off. But he's stuck with Jane Cargill and the baddies. And as soon as I saw who was in the interview, I wrote shit or bitch. That was what was the first cuss word I was going to hear in this promo from Jane Cargill, and immediately it was shit. That was the first word. Cut the shit, Tony. So,
and it makes a lot more sense her doing it at the beginning as opposed to when she's walking away.
Well, it doesn't make any sense for her to do it anyway, because why just give people a free shit that means nothing for no reason on television? Use your shits more wisely. So Jane Cargill and Kiera Hogan don't like the other girl who is an interim baddie that Stokely has put in there. Then they talked about the Ring of Honor pay-per-view with the matches that we all want to see. Jay Lethal versus Samoa Joe, FTR versus the Briscoes, that we can't see on AEW programming because it's too cluttered up with fucking comedy. But Did you see who is getting a Ring of Honor World Championship match on Rampage on free TV? Well, it was this past Friday. We didn't watch it like everybody else. They gave Lee Moriarty a Ring of Honor World title match against Jonathan Gresham.
Okay, I was about to say, who's the world champion right now? I'm not even sure.
Well, exactly. It was Jonathan Gresham when they closed up, apparently. But so they're putting their trainee guys in world title matches on free television of Ring of Honor, expect people to think that makes that Ring of Honor is in any way a serious thing. And then Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt, along with Pinhead Singe, came to the announce desk and had to snatch JR's headset for the opportunity to cut a promo about their pay-per-view match for 20 seconds. And because it was a headset microphone and nobody told Jay how to speak into it and the levels are set differently, he was trying to use it like a regular microphone and it sounded like it came from a NASA fucking radio broadcast from the moon. So again, we got 15 minutes of Plumber Moxley and the mascot, but we don't get FTR, we don't get Briscoes, we don't get Lethal, we don't get Samoa Joe, we don't get people we'd like to fucking see because they don't fucking fiddle fuck around playing grab-ass tickle taint and sticky finger with the rest of the Harley Boys as fucking little school friends.
Yeah, why aren't we getting more FTR? The fans chanted their names to the point where the Young Bucks couldn't even ignore it the other day.
That's why we're not getting more FTR. Every time they just crack the door a little bit, the people invite them in with open arms and spurn and scorn the Cucamonga kids, and they can't have that. Then Tony was with Ty Cunty and Anna Jay, and both of them went to the Big Mama School of Acting. And then we got to the tag team title triple threat match. And this, thankfully, is the last of the match of the program. And this is the one you just referenced, Brian. They set it up last week. Starks and Hobbs versus Swerve and Lee versus the Harley Boys. And when the Harley Boys were trying to set this match up to determine who the greatest tag team in wrestling is, that's when the people started chanting FTR, as in, here's who we think is the best, here's who we'd like to see, but they weren't involved.
You think they hear those chants when they go to bed at night? Because those weren't, we want to see you wrestle, FTR. That was, we prefer FTR to you, we're sick of you. Do you think they hear those chants when they close their eyes?
No, because I think they've got their Raycon wireless earbuds in, and they're not even a sponsor this week, folks, but it just came up. Listening to Sockface call their greatest PWG matches from Reseda or Cucamonga or wherever wherever the case. That's what the Harley Boys listen to, is people talking about how great they are when they go to bed at night, because that's why they have all these dreams that they really are.
And of course, it wouldn't be a Harley Boy match without the worst referee in the history of the business.
I was about to say, I wrote Knox referee, this will suck. Hobbs and Starks, again, look great physically. They look great as a team. They're starting to do tag team maneuvers. They just don't get a lot of opportunity to show it because you only see them wrestle every 3 months or so. I think I'm about over Keith Lee. When I just didn't know anything about him and just saw his size and the way he could move, I was thinking, yeah, I could do something with him. But then I started hearing his promos and I started hearing him talk. And then I started realizing that this is probably the best he's going to be because he's almost 40. And I'm like, Anyway, in this match, which you couldn't watch most of it because this was, again, the kind of match that the Harley Boys and their school friends used to have out in the fucking barn in Reseda or Cucamonga or wherever they all played with their friends. It just over and over, shit back and forth. Stuff doesn't make sense. People in the match disappear for lengthy periods of time for no reason otherwise than it's not their turn for the spotlight. And guys just do shit to each other over and over. There's no heel, there's no baby faces, there's no logic. Nick Hartley and Swerve did an extended cheerleading tumbling routine at the start, and then they did a deal where Ricky Starks got involved in this too. He and Nick held their opponent's hands and then walked the top rope into each other and then argued with each other, blah, blah, blah. At one point, because I was watching this, the studio out back is torn up, doesn't have any drywall in it. So Stacy was upstairs in the bedroom watching television while I was watching this in the TV room. And she comes down to take Harley out right at the time that old Matt Hardy gave Ricky Starks and Swerve both a double Northern Lights suplex. And she just looked at it and just burst out laughing and blew snot and continued on outside with the dog. The average person who's not only been a wrestling fan for 30 years, but has actually been in the business, if they want to tell the truth, they may not do it out in public because they want these two little street urchins to get them a job. But to tell the truth, they'd laugh at the Young Bucks because the Young Bucks are fucking funny. Not intentionally, but they're fucking funny. And then somehow or another, they got Keith Lee and Powerhouse Hobbs, who are opponents, to do a double vertical suplex on old Matt Hardy. And boy, they put him down feet first, then ass, then whiplash. Then they did some more indie style shit and went to a break. Keith Lee made a big comeback. At least everybody fed him. Usually they don't bother to do that. Hobbs and Lee, everybody else disappeared besides Hobbs and Lee. And they did their big man stuff. And then at one point, Hobbs knocked Keith Lee off the buckle and hit a frog splash 2/3 of the way out in the middle of the ring and got a 2 count. That should have been the finish. If Hobbs can do that frog splash like that every time, he should never do it unless he's going to beat somebody with it. And that was, the people got a big pop, and you had some hope. Okay, Hobbs and Starks, out of the three of these teams, they should be the world champions. Well, it wasn't. And then everybody else in the match suddenly reappeared, and the moment was lost. And then, did you hear when Sockface, old excrement, said the Young Bucks are one of the toughest tag teams in wrestling? That was a quote.
Look, he's their boy. The reason he's there is them. And there's been numerous comments the last month or so. Remember when Jim Ross said FTR may be the best in the business, and Excalibur couldn't even say that because he didn't want to upset the Young Bucks?
But couldn't he say one of the fastest, or one of the winningest, or one of the most agile, or
he's a dope.
Whatever.
He's a dope. He's a graphic artist wearing a mask. He's a dope.
There's these two undernourished, smarmy, nerdy, conniving little Christian Lilliputians standing in the ring next to fucking Hobbs. And he said, they're one of the toughest tag team. Tough? Fuck. So anyway, umpteen super kicks from the children. And then Hobbs bumps Knox. Not like you have to really anyway, but they did it. The Hardleys got one of the title belts, but Starks foiled them using it. Then Swerve got the belt, but then he dropped it on purpose because he didn't want to use it. But then Matt Hardy nut-shotted Swerve and hit everybody with one of the belts, and then covered Swerve, but that was a 2 count. So they can't do finishes because they do fuck finishes and then ruin them forevermore because people kick out of everything because they have to overdo it all. So then they hit Swerve with their shitty little video game knee lifts, but Starks made the save. And then Keith Lee and Swerve hit a bunch of moves, and then everybody hit a bunch of moves, and it all went to shit. And it way overstayed its welcome. And then they were going so long on time and overtime, my DVR froze again before the pinfall. I know what happened, and I'm about to reveal it, but they were down to the last 30 seconds of the show again. And Stacy said, you can set it for an extra 2 minutes. I said, if they don't care about doing their job, I don't care about going out of my way to do mine. But they put the belts on Lee and Swerve out of nowhere.
We said it on the show last week that wouldn't be surprised if Tony does that.
Instead of putting the belts on FTR on the next pay-per-view like they should have to finish up this program, because right now FTR, what tag team champions are they? Ring of Honor champions, right? Of a company that technically doesn't really exist anymore except in an LLC in Tony Khan's fucking portfolio.
Right, Ring of Honor Tag Champions, about to have a 2 out of 3 falls match with the Briscoes, which we will be watching.
Yes, that will be the rematch of the best tag team match of any company of the year.
They are also the IWGP Tag Team Champions.
Which doesn't make a goddamn shit for anybody's business whatsoever.
And the AAA Tag Team Champions.
Which doesn't make a goddamn shit for anybody's business whatsoever. AEW will still do the same business that they're doing right now, that FTR are the AAA champions or not. And AAA, I'm sure, probably will also. New Japan Pro Wrestling, if they're going to do the same business, I'm sure their fans would like to see FTR, actual Americans that can actually wrestle. But it won't make any difference to AEW's business that FTR are the New Japan champions. And, again, Ring of Honor, Tony owns it. It's dormant right now. They're doing a pay-per-view. FTR could make those belts mean something with the quality of their matches and their defenses and etc. But since we won't be seeing those on television, just on pay-per-view, for a company that technically doesn't exist anymore because Tony doesn't have the balls to get the Briscoes on his show, and or the fucking Hardy Boys don't want that shit anywhere around them because it shames them and embarrasses them by comparison. So the only way to make it make sense for their business, for AEW's business, and to get this company with this television show over is to culminate FTR's winning the 3 belts that are meaningless in the overall scheme of things. The way the 3 belts mean something is aggregately all together. We've won this one, we've won that one, we've won the other one. We beat all those people. Now we're coming for the big one. And the showdown would be for all 4 belts. The real World Tag Team title, which would be the AEW, even though the AEW World Tag Team title is not over either because it's been held for so long by goofs. But in this instance, that would be the way to get the title, the tag team title over and the people holding it. We're going to have this fucking match for all 4 of these titles, including the big one. And then the Hardy Boys would be expected to do what was right for business and put over the babyface team that even all their fans are chanting for in the arenas. And that way FTR would have all 4 belts, including the one set of belts that's important in this environment, which is the AEW belts. And the other 3 belts look good in pictures, and they look good as a conglomerate of all these belts that the guys have won, but individually those titles mean nothing. It was a way to get to someone winning all 4 potential belts. But the Hardys couldn't have it. They can't stand that FTR is better than they are. They can't stand that the people have recognized that, and they can't stand that they're getting backlash, not just from me now, not just from the listeners of this show now, but from a lot of people all over wrestling fandom and Twitter and the internet that said, we're tired of these fucking comedy children. We'd like our talent to be serious, to make sense, and to look like stars.
You sound like some of the guys in the back.
Exactly. So instead of putting the belts on FTR on a big pay-per-view match, the big 2 out of the rubber match, it all fit. The rubber match. The babyface always wins in the end. All the titles on the line. The people chanting for FTR. The way that FTR is doing work to expand Tony's new projects, like Ring of Honor. It all made sense to have the rubber match, put the baby faces over and put all the belts on them. And old Matt and Nikki They're so insecure, and they realize what the fuck's going on, and they can't stand it. This was supposed to be their play toy, their company where they could get all their untalented, cosplaying trampoline cowboy friends jobs. And now they're being seen through. So they had to swerve, no pun intended, the belts out of the way of FTR. What they ought to do, old Matty and Nikki, they ought to call old Kenny, old Twinkle Toes, and they ought to put out a call to Reseda, to the barn out there, and they ought to find some more of their play friends that like to just wrestle until they get tired of doing moves. And that's what the pay-per-view match ought to have been. Put them all in the same match on the next pay-per-view. And put them all together so they can play with each other and stick fingers up each other's asses and grab each other's dicks and use invisible force fields and just all, and hand grenades and all that stupid, phony bullshit that all of them and their friends used to do in PWG. And that way we could leave the rest of the pay-per-view for the real wrestlers trying to have real matches.
So what do you think they're going to really do on the pay-per-view? If they're not going to have the tag team title match with FTR, so that means FTR has to do something different. What do you think the Young Bucks will do?
Who not? Probably get a bunch of their friends together and have one of their fucking little fucking.
It's got to be Kenny,
high spot matches,
right? If they're not going to wrestle
he's
FTR,
up, though he'll never be the same again after all of his injuries that he suffered wrestling children.
You know what? He's piping off recently. We talked about it on the show. We embarrassed him when we talked about his stupidity and piping off on us. He's doing that for a reason. Watch him be at that pay-per-view. Watch it be the Bucks and him at that fucking pay-per-view.
You think he's trying to get some attention off of our audience and our reach because he's about to make his reappearance and everybody has pretty much not been calling for it because everybody's been happy that he's been gone and they didn't have to see him?
I think they should be worried. We've been talking on the show about FTR being the better tag team for 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is. Everyone else has caught up to us. Everyone else is now realizing, shit, Dax Harwood really is one of the best workers in the entire business.
Cash, too, very underrated.
Absolutely. But people are realizing they're actually good at tag team wrestling. They don't need to have a referee that turns his back on all the rules. They can work a brilliant match that gets the entire room going within the confines of the traditional rules of professional wrestling. And the fans have caught up to it. The AEW fans let the Young Bucks know that they prefer FTR. And these guys are all real sensitive. Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega, the Bucks, Adam Page. These are the most sensitive people, and they can't deal with it. Adam Page couldn't deal with the fact that CM Punk was the star when he was the champion. Young Bucks can't deal with the fact that FTR are the better tag team, and everyone knows it now. Kenny Omega can't deal with the fact that everyone hasn't accepted he's the best wrestler on the planet. But I think the interesting tale will be in the next few years. I don't know if you're going to read about it in The Observer, but there are a lot of people who don't speak up about what they think about Omega and the Bucks because they're scared of any political fallback. That they'll be
and I got to be honest with you. I've been in the business for a long time, and I remember when, you don't want to piss off Vince McMahon. Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off Jim Barnett. Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off Bill Watts. Oh, yeah, you don't want to piss off any interchangeable mover and shaker in the business. But I got to be honest with you, the day that the time came in the wrestling business where anybody would be fucking concerned with what Matt or Nick Hardley or Harpo McFingerfuck says, does, or thinks about them, those flaming fucking unmassing guild pussies, that's a fucking embarrassing thing to say. That anybody, politically, personally, or otherwise, would be concerned with what those fucking little dweebs have to think about anything.
You know as well as I do some of the behind-the-scenes shit that went on in Ring of Honor, and we've heard from people about what went on in New Japan with them, and we've heard from people with AEW about them. They're manipulators. They try to pretend like they're just, hey, we're just doing this. They're manipulators, trying to get them and their friends over and trying to hurt and hold back anyone who's not along with them for the ride. And the stories will come out. The stories about Omega are the most fascinating fucking stories. The stories about guys fighting with him in emails. There's so many Omega stories. I can't wait.
The word douchebag gets thrown around a lot.
A lot. Multiple people have called him a douchebag to us alone.
You know, Brian, if only these people had someone to talk to run some of these things by before they go and say or do them in public. Maybe if the Hardley Boys had called up BetterHelp and said, hey, do you think we really ought to pitch a fit and make Tony put our tag team title belts on these other guys instead of FTR because we're jealous? Maybe a licensed therapist at BetterHelp could have said, no, what you need to do is you need to just get over your inferiority feelings and do what's right for your business and your employer. Maybe that's what they would have said. Some way or another, they could have given good advice to bad actors. And folks, if you're not a bad actor or a bad wrestler, if you just have stress in your life, if you're burned out, if you need to take care of your brain, which, by the way, the rumor is, Brian, that you only get one brain for your entire life. You have to keep it. 95% of the people keep the same brain for their entire life. That's what I'm hearing. And how we take care of our minds affects how we experience life. So you got to keep your brain healthy. Like learning a new language, keep it nimble. That's like brain exercise, or taking power naps. Keep your brain rested, or BetterHelp online therapy. If you want to talk to somebody that can give you another viewpoint on what you're thinking about, you go to BetterHelp.com, and they offer online therapy, video, phone sessions, live chat-only therapy sessions. You don't even have to get in front of a camera if you don't want to. More affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched up with a therapist in under 48 hours. Imagine if you could get everybody else that you need in your life in under 48 hours. Try getting a landscaper, by cracky. Anyway, and right now, our listeners are getting 10% off their first month services at BetterHelp. That's HELP. BetterHelp.com/JCE. BetterHelp.com/JCE. 10% off your first month services. I think I would even pay for the Hardley Boys' first month services if they would just call and find somebody to talk to.
Do you think it would actually help them, though?
No, because you have to be willing to help yourself before anyone can help you. And the Hardley Boys are helpless.
But you can get help today with BetterHelp.
That's right. Who, me?
Anyone, including you.
I was talking to you.
Well, any of them, you or I.
Any of us.
Or together.
Except these dimwits, the Hardley Boys. You can't help them because they don't deserve it. But everybody else does.
That's
everybody
right.
needs a little help.
So go to BetterHelp, unless you're the Young Bucks.
Unless you're the Young Bucks, and then just live in misery. Just be miserable forever. We wish that upon you.